The wind didn't howl. It screamed. It tore across the Alaskan tundra like a living thing, savage, relentless. A banshee with teeth made of ice. The kind of cold that doesn't just bite, punishes. It reaches through layers of Gore-Tex and fleece and wool, past skin and muscle, straight down to the marrow where it whispers a simple truth. You don't belong here. Elias Vance knew that truth well. His Ford F-250 crawled along what used to be a trail, now just a suggestion beneath 3 feet of fresh powder. The headlights cut weak tunnels through the whiteout, revealing nothing but more white, more wind, more emptiness. The dashboard clock read 4:47 a.m., -42 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind chill pushing it to -60. Numbers that kill. Inside the cab, the heater roared, but Elias barely noticed. His eyes slate gray, permanently tired, fixed on the white void ahead with the same 1,000-yard stare he'd carried for 3 years. His right hand gripped the steering wheel. His left rested on his thigh, fingers occasionally twitching toward the center console where a small wooden box sat, secured with paracord. He hadn't opened that box in 6 months. The truck lurched over a hidden rut. Elias corrected without thinking, muscle memory from 1,000 patrols in 1,000 different hells. Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, places where the sand was as unforgiving as the snow, where death waited in every shadow. But those shadows had faces, enemies, targets. The shadow was just empty. His CB radio crackled with static. He'd stopped checking in with the ranger station weeks ago. Out here, 30 miles from the nearest human, 40 from Coldfoot, communication felt like a courtesy extended to ghosts. The trap lines stretched another 8 miles north, his livelihood now, checking steel jaw traps for lynx and wolverine. Brutal work for brutal country. Perfect for a man trying to disappear. The wooden box shifted slightly as the truck bounced. Elias's jaw tightened. He could feel its weight even when he wasn't touching it, heavier than the few ounces of metal and fabric it contained. A folded American flag. An empty medicine bottle with a child's name on it. A sergeant's patch torn at the edge. Don't. He pushed the thought away like he'd pushed away 1,000 others, building that interior wall higher, thicker. The wall that kept him functional. The wall that kept him moving through each day like a machine. Wake, check traps, skin catches, eat, sleep, repeat. No room for memory. No space for the screaming that lived just behind his eyes. The truck's headlights caught something. Just a flash. A darker shape against the white, off the trail about 30 yards. Could be a fallen tree. Could be a drift. Could be nothing. Elias slowed, instinct overriding apathy. Situational awareness it never left, even when everything else did. He'd seen too many nothings turn into somethings. His brain automatically processed. Wind direction southwest, visibility 20 feet. No tracks visible, no movement. He almost drove on, but something made him stop. Not a sound, not a sight, something else. That feeling he'd learned to trust in Ramadi, in Kandahar, in places where ignoring your gut meant a flag-draped coffin. The feeling that whispered, check your 6. Elias put the truck in park, engine running. He pulled his balaclava up over his nose, tugged his fur-lined hood tight, and grabbed his maglite. The cold hit him like a physical blow the moment he opened the door, a sledgehammer of wind that stole his breath. -60 felt like the surface of another planet. He moved toward the shape, boots crunching through the crust. The maglite beam swept left, right, maintaining a tactical pattern even though the only enemy here was exposure. 20 yards. 15. 10. Then he saw them. Eyes. Not the green eyeshine of a wolf or the yellow of a lynx. These eyes were brown. Deep liquid brown. Filled with something that made Elias's chest constrict for the first time in 3 years. Terror. And defiance. The German shepherd lay in a shallow depression, her body curved into a crescent. She didn't move when the light hit her, couldn't move because beneath her, tucked against her belly and chest, were 2 tiny shapes. Puppies, maybe 8 weeks old. Their small bodies pressed into her fur, stealing what little warmth she had left. The dog's coat was thick with ice. Icicles hung from her muzzle. Her breathing came in shallow, labored gasps that produced tiny clouds of vapor. One of her front paws was extended, covering the puppies' heads, protecting them even as she froze. Elias stood there, the wind screaming around him, staring into those eyes. And for a moment, just a fraction of a second, he wasn't in Alaska. He was in Helmand Province. In a compound, looking at a woman's eyes as she pressed her 6-year-old daughter behind her back. The girl's insulin pump broken. The extraction hello 40 minutes out. The Taliban closing in. "We'll come back," he'd promised. "I swear to God, we'll come back." But they hadn't made it back. Not in time. The dog's eyes held the same plea. Save them. Not me. Them. Here's what most people don't understand about hypothermia. You've got minutes, not hours, before your decisions stop making sense. Before you forget why you came outside. Before you lie down in the snow and never get up. This dog had maybe 10 minutes left. Maybe less. And if you think that's terrifying, imagine not knowing the signs until it's too late. We cover real survival situations on this channel, the kind that could save your life or someone you love. Subscribe now so you're never caught unprepared. Because when seconds count, knowledge is the only thing between you and a tragedy. And if you're still watching without subscribing, drop a comment. What's holding you back from taking that step? Elias moved without conscious decision. His brain shifted into combat mode, that cold, calculating state where emotion got locked in a box and training took over. Triage protocol. Assess, prioritize, act. He'd done this with wounded teammates under enemy fire. He could do this. He had to. "Easy," he said, his voice absorbed by the wind. "Easy, Mama." The dog's ears twitched. She didn't growl, didn't bare teeth. Just watched him with those eyes, her body trembling with exhaustion and cold. She was giving everything she had to keep those puppies alive, burning her last reserves of energy, and she knew it. Elias dropped to one knee, ignoring the cold seeping through his pants. He moved slowly, deliberately, keeping his hands visible. The dog tracked his movements but didn't flinch away. She was too weak. Or maybe, and this thought cut deeper than the wind, maybe she understood. He reached out, removed his glove, and pressed 2 fingers against her neck. Her pulse was thready, irregular. Hypothermia, advanced stage. Core temperature probably down to 90 degrees, maybe lower. The puppies were warmer, insulated by her body, but not by much. Combined weight of all 3, maybe 65 pounds. Transportable. The tactical part of his brain was already calculating. Distance to truck, 30 yards. Time to load them, 2 minutes. Drive time back to his cabin, 45 minutes in this weather. Survival probability if he left them, 0. Survival probability if he acted now, unknown but non-zero. "All right," he murmured. "We're gonna move. Gonna be fast." He stripped off his heavy parka, his primary defense against the cold, and laid it flat on the snow. The wind hit his core layer immediately, but he ignored it. 30 seconds of exposure wouldn't kill him. Hypothermia killed slow unless you were stupid about it. Moving with practiced efficiency, he scooped up the puppies first. They whimpered, tiny sounds barely audible over the wind. Their eyes weren't even fully open yet. Newborns or close to it. He placed them in the center of the parka, their small bodies already shaking. The mother watched, tracking his every movement. When he reached for her, she finally reacted, not with aggression, but with something worse. She tried to stand, to follow, and her legs folded. She collapsed into the snow with a small, defeated sound that somehow cut through the wind's roar. "I got you," Elias said, and his voice cracked for the first time in 3 years. "I got you, Mama. I got your babies." He gathered her into his arms, surprised by how light she felt, how fragile. A German Shepherd should weigh 70, 80 pounds. She felt like 50, maybe less, starved, abandoned, left out here to die with her pups. Who does that? What kind of human being abandons a nursing mother in the Alaskan winter? The anger surprised him. He'd stopped feeling anger. He'd stopped feeling most things. But this ignited something he thought had frozen solid. He bundled the mother into the parka with her pups, wrapping them together, then lifted the whole package. The cold ate at his chest and arms through his base layers. The wind found every gap, every opening. His face went numb. His hands started to ache. 30 yards. He could do 30 yards. He moved through the snow, fighting for each step, the bundle pressed against his chest. The mother's breathing warmed his collar. The puppies whimpered. 20 yards. 15. His legs burned. His lungs burned. Everything burned except the core of him that stayed ice cold. The part that had been frozen since Hellman Province. 10 yards. 5. The truck loomed out of the white, headlights still cutting through the storm. Elias yanked open the passenger door, laid the bundle on the seat, then practically fell into the driver's side. He slammed the door, and suddenly the wind scream dropped to a dull roar. He cranked the heater to maximum. His hands shook as he unwrapped the parka. The mother looked up at him, and something in her expression made his throat tight. Gratitude. Trust. The puppies squirmed against her belly, seeking warmth they'd almost lost forever. Elias pulled off his wet base layer, grabbed the emergency blanket from behind the seat, the silver mylar kind that reflected body heat, and wrapped all three of them. The mother's shivering intensified, which was actually a good sign. Shivering meant her body was still trying to generate heat. When the shivering stopped, that's when you were in real trouble. He knew that from experience. From holding Private First Class Marcus Chun in a Hindu Kush blizzard, feeling the shivering stop, feeling the kid go still. Don't. He shoved the memory back, focused on what was in front of him. The dog. The puppies. The living, not the dead. 45 minutes, he told her, putting the truck in gear. You stay with me for 45 minutes and we're home. You can do that. I know you can. The mother's eyes closed, then opened, closed again, fighting to stay conscious. Hey! Elias reached over, scratched behind her ear with fingers that were starting to regain feeling. Stay awake, Mama. That's an order. One ear twitched. Her eyes opened and stayed open. The truck lurched forward, back onto what passed for a trail. The GPS said 43 miles to his cabin. In this weather, it might as well have been 400. But Elias had made impossible journeys before. Through hostile territory, behind enemy lines, carrying wounded brothers when his own legs screamed to give up. He'd always made it back. Except once. The wooden box on the console seemed to pulse in his peripheral vision. He didn't look at it. Couldn't look at it. Not now. The storm battered the truck, trying to push them off the trail, trying to bury them. Visibility dropped to 10 feet, then 5. Elias drove by instinct and GPS. One hand on the wheel, one hand resting on the mother's head, feeling each labored breath. Come on, he whispered. Come on, Mama. Don't quit on me. She was still shivering, still breathing, still alive. That was enough. For now, that was enough. The miles crawled past. 10, 15, 20. The mother's breathing evened out slightly. The puppies stopped whimpering, warming up against their mother and the heater's blast. Elias's own body temperature stabilized, though his chest ached from the cold exposure. 30 miles. 35. The dog's eyes opened fully, and she looked at him. Really looked with an intelligence that seemed almost human. Her tail moved slightly, not a wag, just an acknowledgement. Thank you. Elias felt something crack in his chest. Not break, crack, like ice on a frozen river when spring finally comes. Don't thank me yet, he said quietly. We're not there, but they would be. He'd make damn sure of it. Because for the first time in 3 years, Elias Vance had someone depending on him who he might actually be able to save. And that thought terrified him more than any enemy ever had. The cabin appeared through the white like a miracle, a dark shape that gradually resolved into split logs and a stone chimney, drifts piled against the north wall up to the windows. Elias had bought it with his discharge pay, needing somewhere far from people, far from questions, far from the sympathy in everyone's eyes that felt like acid. He parked as close to the door as the drifts allowed, killed the engine, and scooped up the bundle. The mother whimpered softly as he moved her, the puppies squirming against the sudden shift. His legs had stiffened during the drive, but he pushed through it, fighting through knee-deep snow to the door. Inside, the cabin was cold but not deadly. Maybe 40 degrees. He'd banked the wood stove before leaving, and embers still glowed in the firebox. Elias laid the bundle on the thick rug in front of the stove, added kindling, blew on the embers. Flames caught, spread, hungry for the larger logs he added. Within minutes, warmth began pushing back the cold. The mother tried to stand when he unwrapped the mylar blanket. Her legs shook, held for a moment, then folded. She went down hard, a soft grunt of pain escaping. The puppies tumbled against her belly, mewling. "Easy," Elias said, kneeling beside her. "Give it time." He'd seen hypothermia before. The recovery wasn't instant. The body needed to rewarm slowly, carefully. Too fast and you could shock the heart 'cause arrhythmia. He'd watched a Marine die that way once, pulled from freezing water and warmed too quickly, his heart just stopping. Elias grabbed towels from the bathroom, gently rubbed down the mother's coat to remove the ice and moisture. She tolerated it, too exhausted to resist. Her ribs showed through her fur, every bone visible. When had she last eaten? Days? A week? He moved to the kitchen, pulled out a package of ground beef from the freezer, thawed it in the microwave. Added rice, some chicken broth. Made a warm mash that would be easy on her stomach. Filled a bowl with lukewarm water. When he set both down in front of her, the mother just stared. Then she looked at the puppies, back at the food, back at Elias. The message was clear: them first. Always them first. "They're nursing," Elias said quietly. "You eat, they eat. That's how this works." He pushed the bowl closer. The mother sniffed it, looked at him one more time, then began to eat. Slowly at first, then with increasing desperation. She finished the bowl in under a minute. Elias refilled it. She ate that one too. He made a third. You know what's haunting about this moment? It's not just about survival, it's about trust. This dog had every reason to fear humans. Someone abandoned her to die. But she chose to trust Elias anyway. Chose to believe one person could be different. We tell stories like this because they remind us what matters when everything else is stripped away. Most viewers miss the deeper lessons in these stories unless they're part of this community. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, and more importantly, so you understand why it matters. If you're still on the fence, comment below and let us know what you need to see. While the mother ate, Elias examined the puppies. Both male. Healthy despite the cold. Their mother's sacrifice keeping them alive against impossible odds. Their eyes were sealed shut, ears folded, maybe 3 weeks old at most. They rooted against the mother's belly, found teats, and began nursing. Elias sat back against the couch, watching the fire. The warmth felt strange on his skin. He'd gotten so used to being cold outside, and inside that heat felt like a foreign language his body had forgotten how to speak. The wooden box sat on the mantel where he'd placed it 6 months ago when he moved in. He could see it in his peripheral vision, could feel its weight even from across the room. The mother finished eating, drank half the bowl of water, then settled onto her side so the puppies could nurse more easily. Her eyes tracked Elias, wary but no longer terrified. She was still shivering slightly, but it was the normal shivering of warming up, not the violent tremors of hypothermia. She'd make it. They'd all make it. The thought should have brought relief. Instead, it brought something heavier, darker. They'll make it because you got there in time. Not like, "No," Elias said aloud, his voice sharp in the quiet cabin. The mother's ears pricked forward. She watched him with those brown eyes, intelligent and assessing. Judging, maybe, or maybe just seeing. Dogs did that. Saw things humans missed. Elias stood, moved to the kitchen, put coffee on. His hands shook slightly as he measured grounds, not from the cold, but from the adrenaline crash. The mission high wearing off, leaving behind the familiar emptiness. Except it wasn't as empty as usual. He could hear the puppies' small sounds as they nursed. Could hear the mother's breathing evening out. Could hear the fire crackling. The wind still screaming outside but distant now, kept at bay by walls and warmth. Sounds of life. When was the last time his cabin had sounds of life? The coffee maker gurgled. Elias poured a cup, Added nothing, he took it black, the way he'd learned to drink it in the field where cream and sugar were fantasies, and leaned against the counter. Through the window, he could see nothing but white. The storm wasn't letting up. They'd be trapped here for at least a day, probably two. Trapped with his thoughts, with his memories, with the box on the mantel. He looked at the mother. She'd shifted onto her side fully now, completely relaxed for the first time. The puppies were lined up against her belly like little sausages, their tiny paws kneading as they nursed. Her head rested on the rug, eyes half closed, exhausted but content. She looked at peace, like the weight she'd been carrying had finally lifted. Elias envied that. God, how he envied that. "You got a name?" he asked the dog, knowing she couldn't answer but needing to hear a voice, even his own. "Someone cared enough to get you pregnant, but not enough to keep you. That's humans for you. We're good at the creating part, not so good at the keeping safe part." The mother's tail moved slightly, just a small thump against the floor. Elias took a sip of coffee. It burned his tongue, but he welcomed it. Pain meant feeling, and feeling meant alive. "I had a dog once," he continued, the words coming before he could stop them. "Diesel. Black lab. My ex-wife got him in the divorce. Probably for the best. I wasn't around enough to take care of him. Always deployed. Always gone." The mother watched him, her expression somehow sympathetic, like she understood. "I'm good at leaving," Elias said quietly. "Not so good at staying." The cabin fell silent except for the fire and the wind. Elias drank his coffee, watched the flames, tried not to look at the box. Failed. It sat there on the mantel, small and wooden and innocent looking. But Elias knew what innocence looked like, and this wasn't it. This was guilt in physical form. Shame and failure and all the what-ifs that ate at him every single day. What if I'd moved faster? What if I'd called for the extraction sooner? What if I'd stayed? The mother made a soft sound, pulling his attention back. One of the puppies had detached and was crawling blindly toward Elias, tiny paws paddling. The mother watched but didn't intervene, trusting. Elias set down his coffee, knelt, and carefully picked up the puppy. It fit in one hand, warm and squirming. It made small grunting sounds, rooting against his palm, looking for food it wouldn't find there. "Wrong tree, buddy," Elias said, but his voice had gone soft. "Mom's got what you need." He returned the puppy to its mother. She sniffed it, licked its head, then looked at Elias with those eyes again. The eyes that saw too much. "I couldn't save them," Elias said. The words came out raw, scraping his throat. "The woman and her daughter. I promised I'd come back, and I couldn't save them." The mother's ears came forward, listening, not judging, just listening, and something in Elias broke. He sank down onto the floor, his back against the couch, coffee forgotten. The words poured out like blood from a wound that had never properly healed, just been bandaged over and ignored. Her name was Nasreen. The daughter was Amira, 6 years old, type 1 diabetic. We'd been working with the village for months, hearts and minds operation, building trust. Nasreen would bring us tea, let Amira practice her English on us. The kid was sharp, wanted to be a doctor, his hands clenched into fists. The mother shifted, placed her head on his knee. The weight of it anchored him. The Taliban hit the village during a medical clinic. We fought them off, but Amira's insulin pump got destroyed in the fighting. We called for an emergency extraction. Hello was 40 minutes out. Should have been enough time. Should have been. The fire popped. Elias flinched. They came back. Bigger force. We had to pull back to a defensible position. I told Nasreen to come with us. Begged her. But she wouldn't leave her home. Said the Taliban would burn it if she ran. I gave her my sat phone. Told her the extraction was coming. Promised her. Swore to her. His voice cracked completely. The hello got hit by an RPG on approach. Crashed. The QRF didn't reach the village for another 6 hours. When we got back, he couldn't continue. Couldn't say what they'd found. The mother lifted her head, licked his hand. Once, twice. Her tongue was warm and rough and real. Amira's insulin, Elias whispered. She needed it within hours. We were so close. So goddamn close. He looked at the box on the mantel. They sent me Amira's medical bracelet, her mother's wedding ring, and a commendation, a fucking medal for tactical excellence during the operation. Like any of that mattered. Like any of that brings them back. The cabin fell silent. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the fire crackled. The puppies nursed. The mother kept her head on Elias's knee, her presence a gentle pressure that said, I'm here. You're not alone. I couldn't save them, Elias said again, softer now. But I saved you. I saved your babies. Does that count for anything? The mother's tail thumped twice against the floor. Her eyes met his, and in them Elias saw something he hadn't seen in 3 years. Forgiveness. Not from her. From himself. Just a glimmer. Just a possibility. But it was there. He reached out, scratched behind her ears. She leaned into the touch, trusting completely. This dog who'd been abandoned, starved, left to freeze to death, she chose to trust again. Chose to live again. If she could do that, maybe, this is the moment that changes everything. Not just for Elias, not just for this dog family, but for anyone who's ever carried guilt so heavy it felt like drowning. We share these stories because someone watching right now needs to hear them. Someone needs to know that redemption isn't a fantasy, it's a choice you make every single day. Subscribe so you're here when we tell the next one. Because these stories, they're not just entertainment. They're lifelines. And if something's stopping you from hitting that button, we genuinely want to know, drop it in the comments. The storm didn't break for 2 days. Elias spent that time in a routine that felt foreign and familiar all at once. Feeding the mother every few hours, changing bedding, monitoring the puppies' nursing, keeping the fire stoked. Simple tasks, caretaking tasks, the kind of tasks that required attention but left space for thinking. Too much space. The mother he'd started calling her Freya in his head, after the Norse goddess of war and love, seemed appropriate, recovered steadily. Her shivering stopped after the first 12 hours. By day 2, she was standing on her own, moving around the cabin with a slight limp in her rear left leg, probably from exposure or an old injury. But she was alive. The puppies were alive. 3 lives saved. 2 lives lost. The thought came at odd moments. While making coffee. While splitting firewood. While watching Freya clean her puppies with careful licks. The guilt hadn't disappeared, it sat in his chest like a stone, but it felt different now. Less crushing. More like something he could carry. On the second night, the wind finally died. Elias stood at the window, watching the stars emerge through breaking clouds. The temperature had risen to -20, practically tropical. The snow had stopped, leaving the world buried under 4 feet of pristine white that glowed silver in the moonlight. Beautiful, deadly, indifferent. Behind him, Freya made a small sound. Not distress, something else. He turned. She was standing, but her posture was wrong. Her back arched slightly, head down. One of the puppies wasn't nursing, was lying still on the blanket. Elias crossed the room in 3 strides, dropped to his knees. He picked up the puppy. The smaller one, the one who'd been less vigorous. His body was warm but limp. No breathing. No heartbeat. No. Not this one too, Elias heard himself say. Not after everything. His training kicked in. Infant CPR. Same principle as human babies, different scale. He positioned the puppy in his palm, used 2 fingers to compress the tiny chest. 15 compressions, then a small puff of air into its mouth. The chest rose, fell. No response. Again. 15 compressions. Breathe. Nothing. Come on, Elias growled. Come on, fighter. You didn't survive -40 just to quit now. Compress. Breathe. Compress. Breathe. Freya watched, her eyes fixed on her puppy, a small whine building in her throat. He's not gone, Elias told himself. He's not gone yet. I won't let him be gone. His hands moved with mechanical precision. 15 compressions. Breathe. He'd done this before in the field with teammates. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't. But you always tried. You always tried. Come on, buddy. Your mom needs you. Your brother needs you. Come on. Compress. Breathe. The puppy's mouth opened. Tiny gasp. Then another. His chest began to rise on its own. Small, rapid breaths. The heartbeat returned, fluttering against Elias's palm like a hummingbird. That's it, Elias breathed. That's it, fighter. Stay with us. He held the puppy against his chest, feeling each breath, counting each heartbeat. Freya pressed against his side, her nose touching her baby, licking it frantically. The puppy mewed, a sound that pierced straight through Elias's chest. Alive. Still alive. He'd saved it, pulled it back from whatever edge it had been teetering on. The feeling that flooded through him wasn't triumph. It was relief so intense it felt like pain. You're okay, he whispered to the puppy, to Freya, to himself. You're gonna be okay. He sat there on the floor for an hour, monitoring the puppy, making sure its breathing stayed regular. Freya never left his side, her head resting on his leg, trusting him completely. The other puppy nursed, oblivious to the drama. When Elias finally felt confident enough to set the recovered puppy down with its mother, he had to wipe his eyes. The first tears he'd shed in 3 years. They felt hot and strange on his cheeks. Freya carefully positioned both puppies at her belly, licking them both, whining softly. Then she looked at Elias with those brown eyes, and he understood. Thank you. You saved them. You saved us. And Elias understood something too. Something that had been buried under 3 years of guilt and isolation and self-imposed exile. He couldn't save everyone. Nasreen and Amira were gone, and no amount of guilt would bring them back. The world was full of things beyond his control, RPGs and failed extractions and little girls who needed insulin they'd never receive. But he'd saved Freya. He'd saved her puppies. He'd pulled that tiny life back from the edge when every second counted and failure was not an option. That was something. That was something. He looked at the box on the mantel. It sat there, wooden and silent and full of ghosts. The ghosts would never leave completely. He knew that. They were part of him now, woven into his DNA like the scars on his body and the lines on his face. But maybe, just maybe, he could carry them without being crushed. Could honor Nasreen and Amira not by drowning in guilt, but by doing what he'd done tonight. What he'd done in the snow. What he might do tomorrow and the day after. Saving who he could. When he could. However he could. It wasn't redemption. Not really. Redemption implied you could erase the past, make it unhappen. But you couldn't. The past stayed. The failures stayed. The losses stayed. What you could do was choose what came next. Elias stood, walked to the mantel and picked up the box. He opened it for the first time in 6 months. The flag was still folded in a perfect triangle. Amira's medical bracelet, pink, with hearts, gleamed in the firelight. Nasreen's simple gold wedding band rested in the corner. I'm sorry, Elias said quietly. I'll always be sorry, but I can't stop living. You wouldn't want that. I know you wouldn't. He carefully took out the bracelet, placed it around his own wrist. It was too small, meant for a child, but he could feel its weight. Its reminder. He would carry it, carry them, but he would also keep moving forward. He returned the box to the mantel, but it felt lighter now. Or maybe he felt stronger. Behind him, Freya made a soft sound. Both puppies were nursing again, the crisis past. The recovered one was as vigorous as its brother, fighting for position. Survivors, both of them. You need real names, Elias said, sitting back down beside them. Can't keep calling you the puppies. He studied them. The larger one, the fighter who'd never faltered. You're Atlas, because you're gonna hold up the world. The smaller one, the one who'd come back from the edge. You're Phoenix, because you rose from the ashes. Freya's tail thumped approval. Or maybe she just liked the sound of his voice. Either way, it felt right. That night, Elias slept on the floor next to them. Not because they needed him. Freya was a good mother, attentive and capable, but because he needed them. Needed to hear their breathing. Needed to know that life continued. That despite cold and abandonment and all the cruelty the world could offer, warmth still existed. Family still existed. Hope still existed. He woke once in the darkness. the fire burned down to embers. Freya was awake too, her eyes reflecting the dim glow. She was watching him, guarding him the way he'd guarded her. They were a pack now, he realized. However temporary, however unexpected, they were a unit. And something in that simple truth felt like coming home after a very long deployment. By day 3, the world outside had transformed from hostile to merely harsh. The sun broke through, turning the snow into a field of diamonds. The temperature climbed to -10. Elias dug out the truck, cleared a path from the cabin, and checked his supplies. Freya was strong enough now to walk outside, though she stayed close to the cabin. Her puppies were thriving, Atlas already showing his dominant personality, Phoenix more cautious but determined. They were growing, changing daily, life asserting itself. Elias stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching Freya sniff around the cleared area. She'd probably never see the people who abandoned her again. Probably better that way. Some betrayals ran too deep to forgive. But she'd survived it. Survived and kept her babies alive through sheer will and instinct. There was something profound in that. Something Elias was still learning. His satellite phone buzzed, the first signal he'd had in days. 3 missed calls from the ranger station, probably wondering if he'd frozen to death. He should call them back. Should let someone know he was alive. Instead, he called a different number. One he hadn't dialed in 2 years. It rang 4 times. Then, Elias. His ex-wife's voice. Sarah. Still familiar despite the distance. Hey, he said. Are you okay? I saw on the news about the storm. I thought. I'm fine. I'm good, actually. And he meant it. Silence. Then, you sound different. Yeah, maybe I am. He watched Freya explore, her tail up, confident. I wanted to say I'm sorry, for how things ended. For not being present even when I was home. You deserved better. Elias, let me finish. I've been carrying a lot. Nasreen and Amira. The guilt. I let it swallow me. Let it destroy us. That wasn't fair to you. More silence. He could hear her breathing. Could picture her standing in the kitchen of the house they'd shared, trying to process this. What changed? She finally asked. He looked at Freya, at the cabin, at the bracelet on his wrist. I saved something. Someone. And it reminded me that I'm still capable of that. That I'm not just broken. You were never broken, Elias. Hurt, yes. Lost, yes. But never broken. Maybe. He took a breath. How's Diesel? A soft laugh. Old. Happy. Still chases squirrels he has no chance of catching. That's good. I'm glad. Would you want to see him sometime? When you're back in civilization. Elias felt something loosen in his chest. Yeah, I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. They talked for a few more minutes, careful, gentle words bridging a 2-year silence. No promises. No grand reconciliations. Just 2 people who'd once loved each other. Acknowledging that love didn't have to mean staying together. But it also didn't have to mean staying bitter. When he hung up, Freya was sitting at his feet, looking up at him. Her tail wagged slowly. Progress, he told her. Small steps, right? She sneezed, which he chose to interpret as agreement. That afternoon, Elias did something he hadn't done in months. He drove into Coldfoot. Not for supplies, he had plenty. For answers. The town was barely a town, more a collection of buildings huddled against the wilderness. Population 73 in winter, maybe twice that in summer. Everyone knew everyone, and everyone knew to mind their own business unless invited otherwise. Elias brought Freya with him, leaving the puppies in a secure box by the fire. She sat in the passenger seat like she'd been doing it her whole life, watching the world pass with alert interest. He stopped at the general store first. Rita Magnusson ran it had for 40 years. She looked up when the bell chimed, her weathered face breaking into a rare smile. Elias Vance. Thought the storm got you. Close call. He approached the counter. Rita, you know most people around here. Anyone lose a German Shepherd recently? Pregnant female. Rita's expression darkened. Jake Hendricks had one. Breeder from Fairbanks dumped her on him when she wouldn't produce quality litters. Jake took her, but she shook her head. Jake's got problems. Drinking, mostly. Heard he headed south 3 weeks ago. Left everything behind. Including his dog. Including everything. Why? Found her. Her and 2 puppies. Nearly froze to death out on the tundra. Rita came around the counter. Looked at Freya through the window. She make it. She did. Barely. That's Jake's dog, all right? Saw her around town a few times. Gentle thing. Didn't deserve what happened. Rita studied Elias. You keeping her? The question caught him off guard. He hadn't thought that far ahead. Had been focused on survival, on getting her healthy, on. Yes, he heard himself say. Yeah, I'm keeping her. All 3 of them. Rita nodded, satisfied. Good. She needs someone who'll stay. Someone who'll stay. The words hit harder than they should have. Elias bought supplies, puppy formula in case of emergency, high-quality dog food, toys, medical supplies. More than he needed. More than he'd bought for himself in months. But watching Freya's tail wag when he loaded the bags, it felt right. Felt like building something instead of just surviving. Here's what Jake Hendricks didn't understand. Commitment isn't convenient. Love isn't easy. Sometimes protecting what matters means staying when every instinct screams to run. We built this community on that principle, people who understand that the hard stories, the real stories, are the ones worth hearing. Subscribe so you're part of something bigger than yourself. Because when you're part of this tribe, you never face the darkness alone. Still reading without subscribing? Comment and tell us what would make you take that step. We're listening. Spring came to Alaska the way it always did, slowly, stubbornly, fighting winter for every degree. By early April, the worst of the cold had passed. The days stretched longer. The trap lines became less critical. Elias found himself checking them less frequently, spending more time at the cabin. Training Atlas and Phoenix, who'd opened their eyes, found their legs, and discovered that the world was massive and exciting and full of things to chew. Freya watched her boys with patient tolerance, correcting them when they got too rough, curling around them when they got tired. She'd filled out, her ribs no longer visible, her coat thick and glossy. She looked like what she was. A survivor, a mother, a fighter. She also never left Elias's side. When he split wood, she laid nearby. When he cooked, she supervised from the kitchen entrance. When he slept, she positioned herself between his bed and the door, protecting him the way he'd protected her. One evening, Elias sat on the porch watching the puppies, nearly 4 months old now, gangly and uncoordinated, but growing into their paws, wrestle in the melting snow. Freya sat beside him, her shoulder pressed against his leg. You know what's weird? He said to her. I came out here to disappear, to get away from everything and everyone. Figured I'd just fade out here, checking traps until I couldn't anymore. Freya's ear swiveled toward him, listening. But you 3 showed up and made that impossible. Made me care again. Made me remember that maybe I'm not done yet. That maybe there's still work to do. He scratched behind her ears. I've been thinking. The ranger station mentioned they need volunteers for search and rescue. Winter operations. My training would be useful. Freya leaned into the scratch, her eyes half closed in contentment. Means staying around people. Means putting myself out there. Means risking caring about outcomes I can't control. He paused. Means maybe saving someone else. Someone I can actually save. Atlas bowled Phoenix over in their play fighting. Phoenix recovered, jumped on his brother's back. Both puppies tumbled down the slight incline, a tangle of paws and tails, then scrambled up to do it again. What do you think? Elias asked Freya. Ready to be part of a search and rescue team? You've got the nose for it, the temperament, the heart. Freya looked up at him, her brown eyes steady and sure. Then she licked his hand once. A simple gesture. But Elias understood. Yes, together. Always together. The next morning, Elias made the call to the ranger station. By that afternoon, he was enrolled in the volunteer program. Training would start in 2 weeks. He'd work alongside career rangers, use his skills to help people in trouble in the wilderness. People who got lost, injured, trapped by the same environment that had nearly killed Freya. It wouldn't erase Nasreen and Amira. Nothing would. But it would honor them. It would take the skills he'd learned, the experience he'd gained, the trauma he'd survived, and transform it into something useful. Something good. That night, Elias took out the wooden box one final time. He removed Nasreen's wedding ring, placed it on a silver chain, and hung it around his neck. The ring rested against his heart, a reminder, not a burden. Amira's bracelet stayed on his wrist, pink and small and impossible to ignore. "I'm going to try," he told their memory. "I can't promise I'll save everyone. Can't promise I won't fail again. But I'm going to try." That's what you'd want, right? For me to keep trying. The cabin was silent except for the puppy's soft snores and Freya's gentle breathing. But Elias felt something shift. Not forgiveness, he wasn't sure he deserved that. But acceptance. The understanding that carrying the dead didn't mean dying with them. He could live. He could move forward. He could hold their memory close while still opening his hands to new possibilities. Outside, the northern lights began their slow dance across the sky, green and purple ribbons weaving through darkness, beautiful and ephemeral and proof that even in the deepest dark, light found a way. The emergency call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. 2 hikers, both in their 20s, separated from their group during an early season storm. Last known position, 12 miles northwest of Coldfoot, in terrain Elias knew well. Temperature dropping fast. Visibility near zero. Elias was dressed and moving before the ranger finished briefing him. Freya was already at the door, her search and rescue vest bright orange with reflective strips hanging from her collar. She knew the routine, had proven herself on 6 successful rescues over the summer. "Atlas, Phoenix, stay," Elias commanded. Both dogs, now nearly full-grown and impossibly well-trained, settled by the fire. They'd learned early that sometimes their mother worked without them. The ranger station was chaos, organized chaos, but chaos nonetheless. For teams mobilizing, Elias and Freya were assigned the northwest quadrant, the roughest terrain but the one Elias navigated best. They deployed at 2:47 a.m. The storm wasn't as bad as the one that had brought them together, but it was bad enough. Snow driving sideways, temperature at -15 and falling. 2 hours until hypothermia became critical for the missing hikers. Elias moved through the darkness with Freya at his side, trusting her nose, her instincts. They'd trained for this, lived for this. At 4:23 a.m., Freya alerted. Her body went rigid, nose pointing northeast. Elias followed, pushing through drifts, fighting wind. 50 yards. 75. Then he saw them. 2 shapes huddled under an overhang, barely visible. Male and female, early 20s, both shivering violently. Advanced hypothermia, maybe 30 minutes from unconsciousness. "I've got you," Elias said, dropping beside them. "Stay with me. Help is here." The training took over. Emergency blankets, heat packs, radio for extraction. Assess injuries. The woman's ankle was broken. The man had a head wound. Stabilize. Comfort. Keep them talking, keep them conscious. Freya pressed against the woman, sharing body heat. The woman's shaking hand reached out, touched Freya's head. "Dog," she whispered. "Warm dog. Best dog," Elias corrected, wrapping them both. "She'll keep you warm until the helo gets here." 20 minutes later, the rescue helicopter descended through the storm. The hikers were loaded, treated, transported. Both would make full recoveries. As Elias watched the helicopter disappear into the night, he felt Freya lean against his leg. He looked down at her, saw her looking up at him. "We did it," he told her. "We saved them." Her tail wagged. Once, twice, proud, content, purpose fulfilled. And Elias understood, finally, what he'd been searching for in this frozen wilderness. Not isolation, not exile, not penance, redemption, not the kind that erased the past, not the kind that made the pain disappear, but the kind that proved you could carry your failures and your victories, your losses and your wins, your ghosts and your hope. The kind that said, I failed once, but not today, not this time. He radioed back to the ranger station. Vance to base. Package secured. Both subjects alive and stable. Returning to base. Copy that, Vance. Outstanding work. You and Freya just saved 2 lives. 2 lives. Elias's hand went to Amira's bracelet on his wrist. Then to Nasreen's ring at his chest. I know I can't save everyone, he thought. But I saved these 2. And yesterday I saved someone else. And the day before that, and the day before that. It doesn't erase what I lost. But maybe, just maybe, it's enough. Freya barked once, sharp and commanding. Time to move. Work wasn't done. There were always more people to save, more missions to run, more lives to protect. Lead the way, Elias told her, and followed his partner through the storm. Behind them, the dawn was just beginning to break a thin line of gray on the horizon, promising that even the longest night eventually ended. Even in Alaska, even in winter, even for the wounded, the light always came back. You just had to survive long enough to see it. The fire crackled softly in Elias's cabin as he updated his log that evening. 2 more lives saved. 43 total since he'd started with search and rescue 8 months ago. 43 people who'd gone home to their families because he and Freya had been there. It didn't balance the scales. Nasreen and Amira were still gone. That wound would never fully heal, but it had scarred over, become something he could touch without bleeding. Atlas and Phoenix greeted them at the door, tails going wild, demanding attention from their mother. Freya tolerated their enthusiasm with patient grace, licking each of them before moving to her spot by the fire. Elias made dinner: venison stew, cornbread, strong coffee. Simple food for a simple life, but a life with purpose now, with meaning beyond just surviving another day. His satellite phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Saw you on the news. Those kids you rescued, their parents wanted me to say thank you. So did I. He smiled, typed back. Just doing the work. How's Diesel? Old and stubborn, like someone else I know. Fair. Come visit sometime? He misses you. I miss you. Not like before, but as friends. I think we could be friends. Elias looked at Freya, at the puppies, at the life he'd built from the ruins of his old one. I'd like that. Maybe around Christmas? That would be good. Bring the pack. Diesel needs to teach those puppies how to be proper dogs. Deal. He set the phone down, feeling something warm in his chest. Not romantic love that ship had sailed, but connection, community, the understanding that healing wasn't a solo mission, that you needed your pack. That night, before sleep, Elias did something he'd started doing after every successful rescue. He took out a journal, leather-bound, filling up with pages, and wrote, October 14th. 2 rescued. Madison Cooper, 23, broken ankle. Kyle Rivera, 24, concussion. Both stable. Both alive. Freya alerted at 4:23 a.m. Extraction completed, 4:51 a.m. Both subjects transported to Fairbanks Memorial. Today I kept my promise. I came back in time. He closed the journal, placed it beside the wooden box on the mantel. The box stayed there, he wouldn't remove it. Couldn't remove it. But beside it now was this journal. Evidence that the story didn't end with failure. That new chapters could be written. That redemption wasn't a destination. It was a direction. Freya made a soft sound from her spot on the floor. Elias looked over. She was watching him with those brown eyes, the ones that had seen him at his lowest and chosen to trust him anyway. What? He asked. Her tail thumped twice. In dog language that meant, I'm proud of you. Or maybe it just meant, you're my pack. And that's enough. Either way, Elias understood. Yeah, he said quietly. Me too. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall. But inside the cabin, there was warmth. There was life. There were 3 dogs who'd survived the impossible and 1 man learning to do the same. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. Stories like Elias and Freya's remind us of something crucial. We're all carrying something. Loss, regret, trauma, failure. The weight can feel unbearable. You might think the only option is to isolate, to disappear, to just endure until you can't anymore. But here's what Elias learned in that frozen wilderness. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward while honoring what came before. It means finding purpose in the present while respecting the past. Most importantly, it means understanding that sometimes the thing you save ends up saving you right back. If the story moved you, if it reminded you that redemption is possible, that purpose can be found even in the darkest places, that healing happens in unexpected ways, then you need to be part of this community. Subscribe so you never miss these stories. Because someone watching right now needs to hear the next one. Someone needs to know they're not alone in their struggle. Someone needs permission to keep fighting. And if you're still on the fence, I want you to comment below and tell us why. What would it take? What are you looking for? We're here, we're listening, and we genuinely want to know. Because at Silent Trident Stories, we don't just tell stories about warriors. We tell stories about being human, about failing and rising, about losing and finding, about the long, hard road from darkness to light. And we'd be honored if you walked that road with us. Subscribe, comment, share this with someone who needs it. Because these stories, they're not just entertainment. They're lifelines, and you never know who needs to grab hold. Silent Trident Stories, where warriors find their voice, and everyone finds their strength.